It was a cold, wet, and windy night. A lone traveler stepped into a medieval inn, wet, weary, and tired. As he stepped into the inn, he saw an uncanny character sitting at a table. The character was wearing a mask. The character bid for him to come and sit down, and instinctually he did. In front of the character on the table was a set of dominoes, and he was asked, "Do you want to play a game of dominoes?" The traveler, already being weary and tired, said, "Okay, I'll play your game. But if I win, you must remove your mask." So the game started. The inn became silent and everybody watched what was unfolding. Lo and behold, the traveler won. And the person on the other side of the desk complied. He removed his mask. But there was just another mask. And so another game was played. And then another. And another. And off, one by one, came mask after mask. A king, a priest, a warrior, an engineer, a farmer, and so on, till in the early hours of the morning. Each time a mask came off, the traveler looked at the character and said, "This is still not your true face. Remove your mask." Finally, the last mask did come off, and out of the darkness, only two glowing orbs was looking at the traveler, and a voice said, "You have now seen what you were not supposed to see. Be careful of what you wish for." And then the candle went out, and from the darkness only two glowing embers were watching. The self observing the self, observing the self. Welcome to the Inn Bridge. My name is Henry. I'm your facilitator here. Today we're talking about masks. Masks is an interesting topic. It links to leadership. It links to self-esteem. This even links to neurobiology. We will try to cover some of it, definitely not all. The idea here is the journey of getting to know yourself, understanding the world that you occupy and how you interact with it. So let's just jump right in. Different people know different versions of you. Think about it. Colleagues, friends, family, one or two very close people, each know different versions of you. So the self is not a single face. It's revealed through a sequence of masks. In order to get to masks, we really need to just talk about the self for a while and looking at almost a Jungian perspective. If I use Jung correctly, it will say that the self is a projection of the higher self, and it expresses itself as the ego, the shadow, the anima, animus, and some would even add personality. But this self is then projected outward as a personality and an identity to interact with the world. This becomes the projected self. And that people will see different versions of this, and we will call this your masks. So this is the schema here for that. We also really have to revisit self-esteem. Self-esteem is the golden standard for some, Nathaniel Branden being the original author. Lots of people have worked on it since. I'm also a big proponent of self-esteem, but I view it slightly different. And my work on masks specifically has really said we really need to change something when we look at self-esteem. So my first idea here is to redefine self-esteem. So it's not just how I feel about myself. It's a much deeper level, and not just a common version. It's not a comparison or approval metric, a confidence metric, worthiness narratives, positive self-evaluation loops. All these assume that the ego is the unit of value. But from that Jungian perspective, what if the ego is just functional and a temporary phenomenon? Then self-esteem is sort of directing the ego, and the ego distorts the real self. So what follows is a refinement. So my definition for self-esteem is a non-hostile acceptance of one's existence as a necessary expression of the self in time. If you remember, we did a video on the spirituality of the year and spirituality meets psychology. Here we discover the link: coherence, alignment, resonance with oneself in the now. And your ability to do that becomes basically what I would call your self-esteem. So there's no pride here, there's no confidence or self-liking. It's a non-hostility towards being here. It's the ego's willingness to inhabit the role without resentment, inflation, or withdrawal. So our true access is consent to incarnation on the one hand and resistance to incarnation on the other hand. Self-esteem does not sit on a scale from low to high. It's either, am I content with myself or am I fighting myself? Low self-esteem is not merely self-criticism. It's a resistance to being what and where you are in life. So I don't rate myself. I consent to being here and to live the life that is in front of me. Skip one there. That introduced Stephen Covey, Trust and Inspire. Trust and Inspire, one of the great books on trust. Stephen Covey, brilliant author. I suggest anybody interested in trust and leadership or just trust, get Trust and Inspire. It's up there with Henry Cloud's book on trust. But Stephen Covey goes and he explains to us that from his perspective, you've got a public mask and a private mask. And specifically in low command and control environments, you're not your authentic self. You show up and play a role for competence, compliance, control, fear, protecting yourself against doubt and insecurity. So where trust is low, masks become defensive mechanisms. But let's go a bit deeper. Throughout history, ancient Greece, medieval courts, samurai culture, tribal societies, we find four standard archetypical forces in human relationships: public, the alliance, the private, and the intimate. We also see this here a progression of trust, and we'll come back to that. So I expand Covey's model to include a public, personal, private, and intimate mask. The issue is not merely that we wear masks, but that we wear different masks at different depths. So let's just quickly explain each mask briefly before we delve deeper into them. The public mask is our whole reputation and social performance. The personal mask is relational style, humor, and everyday contact. The private mask is values, narrative, what you keep to yourself. And the intimate mask is vulnerability, trust, and the emotional core. If self-esteem is distorted, we see the public mask become performance, image management, overcompensation. Can you see Stephen Covey there? That's why that book is so brilliant. Personal is approval seeking, adaptive humor, relational over adjustment. The private mask is hidden, shame, unstable narrative, and inward fragmentation. So here you can see the descent into fighting with yourself. Intimate is guardedness, fear of exposure, and emotional volatility. So we also see the progression. A healthy self-esteem will start with this existential consent to reality, to living the life that is in front of you. That stabilizes your ego. A healthy mask is formed. As Jung would say, you own that mask. You don't fight it, you embrace it. That means you begin enjoying the expression of the mask, and you begin with integrating your masks. A self that consents to existence can appear without performance, relate without losing itself, reflect without shame, and trust without collapse. Healthy esteem allows the masks to become instruments rather than prisons. And that is one of our main themes today. Everything else is a consequence of these two statements. Think for yourself. How do you act in public, personal, private, and intimate spaces? Is that because you are trapped in a way of doing things? Or are you actually expressing your authentic self in relation to the environment you are in? Yes, it's a question of self-esteem. But if you look at the masks also express whether they're an instrument being used for yourself or they're a prison to contain yourself and protect yourself. So that brings us to the great Enrico Caruso. Quite interesting when I talk to people about the case of the great Caruso. Not many people today know who he is. And I've got a quote for you here. You look back at the presentation. It's too bad that the public expects from me always perfection, which is impossible for me always to attain. I am not a machine. I am just a human. So he was the greatest recording artist, theater artist, even played in some movies, if I understand it correctly, for about 30 years in the early 1900s. He was a poor Italian migrant, came to America as a small boy, but he became the great Caruso. And in his later life, in an interview, people asked him tell us about this poor boy that migrated from Sicily to the United States. And his answer was, that boy died a long time ago. I am the great Caruso. And the moral of what I'm trying to explain is he became his mask. But from our perspective, think about it, maybe that boy from Sicily already had the theatrics of a public mask of the great Caruso. And as his self-esteem grew, he became to express that authentic self. And I'm willing to bet that if you really got to know him at the intimate level, there would still be huge remnants of that boy who came from Sicily. I think it's a great story, and it shows us how masks can influence life and become success as well. So that brings us to our 4 masks. Quick overview: the public mask. Your reputation, your role, your status, social performance. It is what everybody sees. But how do you enter the room? Have you ever thought about what do people perceive when I enter a room? The face that meets the social world. Are people saying, "Oh God, here he comes again," or "Oh, no, not her. Why?" Or they're going like, "Wow, there's something about that person. We need to understand more." The most visible mask, the one almost everybody sees, a healthy mask would be presence without self-betrayal. The personal mask. Friendships, everyday interactions, humor, personality, the version of you that people know. So the moment people get to know you, they discover your personal mask. How you relate in ordinary life. Humor, warmth, style, adaptation, the vision most people feel they know. That guy at the social who talks to everybody, or that guy at the social who talks to nobody, or doesn't have to be a guy, but you can see the person that is engaging, talking to people. We share stories with him, we talk about movies to him, talk about music. The personal mask. The mask of everyday contact and relational calibration. A healthy mask here is flexibility without fusion. The private mask. Values, beliefs, your personal narrative, your self-reflection. Very few people see this. This will be the people who've known you for many years. The people who have been through hardships with you. People where there's a greater level of trust involved. What matters when no one is watching? Your inner narrative, values and beliefs. What is the story you are telling yourself and others about yourself? The self that maintains continuity. The mask that anchors meaning, direction and personal coherence. A healthy mask here is identity without rigidity. The intimate mask. Vulnerability, emotional truth and deep trust. Only seen by very few people. Intimate mask. What appears only under trust. Our most important concept, trust. Vulnerability, attachment, emotional truths. The deepest and least publicly visible face we wear. But it's still a face. Not performance, it is the threshold of closeness. The healthy form here is openness without collapse. The original model looked like layers. The onion model, you always hear people using about the onion model. So you've got the public, strip that away, personal, strip that away, private, strip that away, intimate. But real life does not work like an onion. So this is where we need to move beyond a static view and the idea that masks are bad or something that hides. And there we have to move into a dynamic aspect. Masks are parts of the self that we activate depending on public, personal, private, and intimate situation. Real life does not work like an onion. So from having a static view to one mask can dominate, stress can make masks leak into one another. Health is fluid access, but not mask removal. The self is not a fixed stack of masks, it's a living system of masks. When masks go wrong, they become prisons. Public, performative life. Personal approval seeking. Private withdrawal. Intimate emotional instability. Masks must be balanced. So let's just look at this. When masks lose coherence, life becomes performative. You live for the appearance. Remember the Lady Gaga song? I live for the applause. And yes, my poker face. Didn't think I'd mention Lady Gaga in a video. Personal dominates. Approval seeking. Boundaries become unstable. Because I want people to like me. So I'm willing to sacrifice parts of myself to be liked. Private. Withdrawal replaces contact. And that is a modern disease. We see so much of that, especially in Generation Z. Withdrawal. Meaning never reaches action. We are experiencing a crisis of meaning. You'll see me repeating that over and over through many of my videos. One of our reasons we don't know how to manage our masks. And I will say it, Generation Z, in what happened in 2020 and 2021, took a huge blow to their ability to use their personal masks. And therefore many of them got stuck only in private masks. Intimate masks, emotion leaks into every context. Vulnerability becomes dysregulation. So we have to come back. That's our overview. Self-esteem, trust. You've got faces you use in different situations, and are they your instruments you use to effect outcomes in this world, or are they the prisons that keep you from achieving in this world? A healthy self-esteem always allows you to own and enjoy your masks. So remember, low self-esteem, masks becomes prisons. High self-esteem, they become your instruments. The aim is not to remove the masks, as people will say you need to strip away the mask to get to the true self. The masks are a part of the true self. Ownership without shame, flexibility without fragmentation. Owning your masks gives you the superpowers of presence, focus, and boundaries. So I literally developed this to explain it to you. It's holding a deck of cards in your hands. Different situations require different masks. So we can make a selection, and depending on the situation, we will choose to act. And that is, as self-esteem grows and maturity in you, I now also understand why I'm using these masks. So just remember, layers of the self, not separate parts or part where it's the same self expressing itself in more than one way. It's really about understanding that it's the public face, the personal face, the private face, and the intimate face is the same person. It's not different people, it's just aspects of the same person. Going back to my favorite topic, ancient wisdom and mystery. Remember from previous videos, who am I, what am I, where am I going, and what happens when I leave? The 5 primordial questions of wisdom. The answer is, know thyself. Be thyself. Love thyself. So masks is a way of understanding why I'm wearing, what I'm wearing, where am I wearing it, and why. This is the most profound insight from doing this work. Masks are interfaces that allows us to interact with the world without losing ourselves. That is part of what gives us agency. Please watch our previous video on agency. One of the most important parts of being. It is how we interact with the world because we have agency. And masks is what actually allows that interaction. So remember, no matter what role you play, whether you're an engineer, a doctor, a professor, a fitter and welder, a game hunter, or game manager, or whether you're just a street sweeper, these are not who you are. They are just masks you wear to interact with the world. Going back to Stephen Covey, expanding the model. A healthy leader does not abolish masks. A healthy leader owns them, consciously aligns them, and prevents them from becoming prisons. In the public mask, lead with clarity, not performance. Relate with warmth, humor, and humanity in the personal mask. Private masks stay grounded in values, convictions, and self-reflection. Something we really need to teach leaders. Not just self-reflection about work, self-reflection about the self. Your agency, trust, boundaries. How do I interact with others? And my own personal story. The intimate mask. Allow measured vulnerability when deep trust exists. A trust and inspire leader creates enough safety that masks no longer need to be defensive. Now, my original take was to stop this video here. And then I kept on working and discovering new stuff. So I'd like to share some extra dimensions to you. First of all, when it comes to the synthesis of the self, my expansion on self-esteem, I'm not going to read through everything. Please do read through it at your own leisure. I will leave it up for a while. But it's where the masks are understood, accepted, and integrated. It's part of getting to know who you are. That question, who am I? At the center that so many people simply cannot answer. In terms of emotional alchemy, it is where emotional energy beneath the mask are transmuted into action and relation through trust, focus, presence, and boundaries. Power, influence, and persuasion. This is where we're going over to the agentic self. This is where the mask becomes tools of agency, presence, and discernment. How do I use mask, and how does it affect me to implement masks in my relationships and communication with others? So that was the first part. Then comes up the question, but if it is about self-esteem and trust? The authentic integrated self, as Jung would call it, or the integrated self. Or Jung would say the individuated self. Heidegger is the integration guy. How do we show up when we are more integrated? Because I'm not going to always say when we are integrated. Nobody is truly integrated. Then you're not supposed to be here anymore. This is the school of integration, alternatively called the University of Hard Knocks. But that is why we are here, to integrate ourselves or to individuate. But somebody who is on this path and growing, how would they show up? And let's look at some explanations here. It's not about performance when we talk about the public mask. It's presence in the role. Visible without needing to impress. Clear without being rigid. Competent without pretending to be flawless. Authoritative without domination. Able to represent the self in the world without losing the self. But now look at this beautiful sentence. The healthy public mask expresses presence, not pretense. Think about that for a while. Presence, not pretense. The personal mask. Warm, adaptive, relational, without becoming approval-seeking. One might even say playful and humorous, but not at the expense of others. Friendly without being false. Humorous without using humor as a defense. Flexible without losing center. Open to connection without compulsive adaptation. Able to meet others as a person, not just as a role. The healthy personal mask expresses humanity, not dependency. The authentic integrated self as a private mask. Inwardly coherent, reflective, and grounded in values. Knows what matters. And just a small asterisk, values are not morals and idealisms, they are intrinsic motivators. Just stop the pop psychology nonsense. Nobody gets out of bed to be a good person. You get out of bed because you have intrinsic motivation to accomplish something. Coming up, we will do a video on values. Setting the topic straight. There's a lot of misinformation when it comes to values. Able to reflect without collapsing into shame. Another major topic in self-esteem, shame. Probably the enemy of most people. Holds a stable inner narrative. I am what I am. Think about the old Gloria Gaynor song. I don't want praise, I don't want pity. I am what I am my own special creation. Come take a look, give me the hook or the ovation. Does not need constant external validations. Protects interiority without withdrawing from life. So can you see once again that presence in life? I'm not fighting life, I'm flowing with life. The healthy private mask expresses inner coherence, not concealment. The intimate mask. deep trust, vulnerability, emotional truth without fusion or instability. Able to be seen without panic. Capable of trust without naivete. Emotionally honest without emotional flooding. Vulnerable without self-erasure. Close without losing boundaries. The healthy intimate mask expresses trust, not exposure. When last did you truly share your intimate mask with someone? Huge question, lots to think about. So, why the masks exist? This section was literally added 30 minutes before I started the recording. But it's beautiful because it's a segue into the neuroscience, neurobiology, and also back to trust. And so we're almost done, bear with me. Masks we wear are not simply psychological defenses, they are biological trust regulators. And once again, that word trust means that it's about hormonal cycles. Human bonding goes through the stages of curiosity, alliance, safety, and vulnerability. Masks are not lies. They are part of the architecture of trust. What does that mean? Once again, you've already seen many of these descriptions, but think for yourself. The public mask is about dopamine, excitement, being in the public space, interacting in the public space. The personal mask is at vasopressin, the team building, the belonging, the alliance hormone, which is missing in most relationships these days. The private mask is where we are working on serotonin, comfort, peace, belonging. And then the intimate mask is an oxytocin mask. And you need oxytocin. You're struggling with that, at least get a pet, because they will at least give you some oxytocin. But there's a whole neuroscience why these four phases need to be played in your life. You need all four. You need all four hormones to function. Of course, on the other side, then you will get adrenaline and cortisol and everything that will throw you off. So remember this key insight. Authenticity does not mean removing masks. Authenticity means knowing where each mask belongs. Healthy relationships move through a natural progression from distance, alliance, safety to intimacy. Trust grows naturally, boundaries remain healthy, intimacy becomes genuine rather than forced. Trust cannot be demanded. It can only be built, and it can very easily be destroyed. Masks are part of the architecture of trust. So here we are almost at the end. One more thought to go. I hope you enjoyed this overview and blink into the world of masks, and I hope it gave you something to think about as you go through your daily life. Think about who you are in the moment. How are you expressing yourself in that place, whether it's at the grocery store, amongst colleagues at work, having a beer with your friends, sitting on the couch with your family watching a movie, or when you're truly with someone special and you're sharing that deeper part of yourself. Hopefully you understand that world a wee bit better now. So So I will leave you with this final thought. Wisdom is not living without masks. Wisdom is wearing them consciously. Thank you for watching The Hidden Bridge. Look forward to talking to you again soon.